Welcome to my Bob Thurman podcast. I'm so grateful some good friends enabled me to present them to you. If you enjoy them and find them useful, please think of becoming a member of Tibet House US to help preserve Tibetan culture. Tibet House is the Dalai Lama's cultural center in America. All best wishes. Have a great day.
This is episode 297, Creating Action from Anger, a Dharma teaching by Robert Thurman.
The Supreme Court's recent ruling is like invading us as if we're the Ukraine. and here, my us is 80%. It isn't just so-called liberals or so-called Democrats. It's 80%. 80% don't want to have people shooting up the schools. 80% want good Social Security. They want single-payer socialized medicine, healthcare like the NHS in England. And so the seeming sort of neck and neck thing has to do with the confusion implemented by the oligarch admirers who want to be them, who admire the ones that are already there, and who, again, the ultimate oligarch is the dictator. So let me do a Dharma teaching. The main Dharma teaching that I'm into nowadays, and I've always been into it, but actually the reassuring side of Dharma, Even, the Buddha said, he gave a new meaning to the word Dharma, which, by the way, for you Vedist-oriented scholars and yogis and so on, the word Dharma was hardly ever used in the Vedic literature. This is a discovery by the great Patrick Olivelle, who is a wonderful translator of Vedic literature. And in his elder years, he also translated some parts of the Buddha's life story, the Lalita Vistara, the most amazing show on earth. But he didn't translate it like that. But that's what it means. Lalita means a game or a play, and has the double meaning of a play, like a dramatic play, and playing. And Vistara means magnificent or expansive or vast or so on. It's the name of the Buddha's autobiography, you could call it. So Dharma meant, before that, duty, but even then it wasn't much used, and it was mainly, he said, the 18 times he found it written in the Vedist, pre-Buddhist literature, was in the context of the royal coronation, when the Brahmin priest would coronate a king. And therefore it meant the duty of the king, because it comes from the verb dhar, to hold. And it means holding you in duty, and therefore it can mean law, it can mean custom, duty, it can mean rule, regulation, this kind of thing, because that holds your behavior, it holds your thinking. It could be a doctrine, like a dogma that you have to believe in, you have to repeat, You can be indoctrinated with. So Dharma can mean those things. But the Buddha added something. He said, no, Dharma means reality itself. And what's great about the Dharma, what I have discovered, this was Buddha's main discovery, by the way, third noble truth, third friendly fun fact, is that reality holds you in freedom from suffering. So if we knew reality, we would be blissful. We would be happy. We would be content. There would be no death. There would be no pain. There would be nothing. In other words, but not nothing. There would be nothing bad. Everything would be fine. Even some little bit of a complication would be just you could be overridden by the basic blissfulness of life. That's what Dharma means. It holds you in freedom, holds you in security from suffering, so that you cannot have pain and suffering where it makes you, or you cannot have pain that makes you suffer. Pain might be something that would alert you to, well, I shouldn't put my hand over in the fire there. But, so it could be like a communication, but not suffering. All right? And that is Buddha's great discovery. That is the third noble truth. That is nirvana. That is the point of my book, Wisdom is Bliss. Because Buddha also was quick to acknowledge we do suffer if we're not enlightened to reality. Meaning knowing reality. Enlightened doesn't mean you have a light in your head. It means that you know what reality is. And then you discover that it is light. It's a kind of light. It's like it's an excellent light that it brooks no shadow, brooks no darkness. So it's a transparent light. It doesn't create shadows. Because it's a light that everything has, the same light. So it doesn't shine on one from thing to another in that way where one is deprived of it and one has it, sort of thing. The transparency, clear light, what we call clear light, prabhasvara, that light is in everything. It is everything. It shapes itself even into hard, solid objects. And we then think that's what they are, as a hard, solid object, because we are misknowing. We are not knowing what it really is. Transparency. And we're totally interflowing with it all. And so I want to stress this point, So therefore I said, so misknowing, and it's not just ignorance. It's not just that you don't know. It's you actively wrongly know. You think you know, but you don't. You're deluded, in other words. Like people like Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, Judge Thomas, Alito, they misknow. They're even irrational. They're really wacky. They're imposing some sort of crazy thing on all of us. They're fanatics. And we have to fix that, and we will. We will, believe me. If you do the right thing with your outrage. But I don't want to pump up outrage right now. First, I want to assure you a bunch of things. There will be no nuclear war by Putin. He will not use the nuclear weapons. He enjoys life a little bit somewhere in the midst of his madness. He's gone a little mad. But he has a good side. He has two nice, beautiful daughters. I'm sure he had a good wife. He smiles when he rides a horse or something and he shows off his pectorals. Tosses somebody in a judo workout. And so he has a good side. And he will not use nuclear weapons. Even if he tries, the angels will prevent it. I promise you, there will be no nuclear war. 1. 2, we will survive the climate catastrophe because we will adapt to it and change it. And we will stop it. We will stop its worst manifestation. We will not allow even a few of the petropaths, I call them, petroleum psychopaths, that means. Or sociopaths, petroleum sociopaths. I call them just simply petropaths. They will not succeed in destroying all life on Earth, even though they're bent on it. They don't think that's irrational because they think life is pointless, meaningless. It's just some sort of, we're biological robots. We have no soul, they have no future. We become nothing when we die. So they just want to grab and guzzle and consume as much as they can before being nothing. Or before returning to what they really think they are, which is actually nothing. The robot is just running around, So they want to have a happy robot, temporarily, thinking that guzzling endless steaks and wines and liquors and women and children and whatever, or men if they're women, is just, that's it. That makes the robot cheer up, and then they die and they're nothing, so then that's that. And there's no consequence. So they think they're rational. And if that was reality, it would be rational. And it's incredibly obvious that it's irrational because nothing is nothing. That's a deep Dharma teaching to know that. Nothing is nothing. It's not a place. You can't go there. You're not there now because we're not in nothing. Please read Kim Stanley Robinson's wonderful Ministry for the Future, which is a sci-fi novel set, however, on this earth in very realistic circumstances. You can only call it sci-fi because science fiction, because it's fiction and it's gripping, so it's an enjoyable read, although a little bit tense. But it's set in 2040 instead of now. And 2040, all the bad trends that are going on now have gotten much worse in his sci-fi thing. But anybody who reads it, and a lot of people have, and I am promoting it, although I don't know him, I'm not his agent, but I admire him, I love him, I deeply, deeply respect what he has achieved there, showing us the way out. And by putting it in 2040, it's even more difficult than it would be now. It's already extremely difficult now because we didn't do it before George Bush. His friends stole the presidency in the year 2000. But anyway, by putting it, so back to Kim Stanley Robinson and the Ministry for the Future, they do what we should be doing now. We're going to do it in the 20s. We're going to have a Ministry of the Future, and it's going to really accelerate. I'm sorry, I'm digressing, because I'm in a good mood in spite of being upset and outraged as you are by the recent demented writings of Mr. Thomas, who is the irrational person, somehow managed to get his way into like a position where he really has no business occupying. He really should be resigning shortly. So I'm just trying to assure you that this is all in terms of non-desperation. If you feel outraged of things going wrong on this planet, you shouldn't do it and let it make you despair. And then that's, people who despair, they shoot their grandmother in the face, they go shoot children, they do crazy things. They do wrong things, or they kill themselves, which is really wrong. By killing yourself, you're destroying a little bit of heaven, because every human being has capacity for heaven, for themselves and for those who love them and who they love. Absolutely. So killing yourself is a completely mistake. Doesn't help at all, because you don't become nothing. Whatever bad situation you feel you're in, it gets worse when you wreck your body. Really, because you can't destroy yourself. You're indestructible already. But the quality of how you're being indestructible is very transformable for good or ill. So you really should be working on transforming it towards the good. It's only rational. It's not religion. It's not Buddhism. It's not Christianity. It's not Islam. It's not them, although they all have aspects of it through their reality system. You could call it a belief system. It's really scientific psychology and physics about the nature of life. That's what it is. And a system of being educated to understand the nature of life, which we are able to do. That's all the good news. If we insist on not doing it and misunderstanding and imposing our delusion on our existence and on others, we will continue to be only occasionally cheered up and mostly unhappy. Okay, so the first big thing to award yourself, and in our culture particularly, we're due to the authoritarian, militaristic, violence-dominating governments that political science says that's what a government is monopoly over an institution that has the monopoly over the use of violence in its territory. But actually, a government is not really violent. A good government. It's because people don't want to wreck and destroy. It doesn't have to harm people because it helps them so much. There are very few criminals, very few murderers. People are conditioned to be happy and kind and compassionate and friendly and intelligent. And they're educated to be intelligent. And so that's what a good government sees to that people internalize the ethic, the human ethic of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Because we are the being, all animals actually have to some extent, but in particular we are the being that can imagine being another being. So we can empathize with others more than other animals do. All moms in every animal kingdom, even egg-laying moms, do. because they sort of know that the egg came out of their body. Or in a mammal, the egg is in the body. They know that. So they all have an ethic of altruism. All life does. Every cell in your body likes coagulating with the other cells, and that's why you have a body. That's why it can form into a body, a community. A body is a community. And when it goes bad, then that's called cancer. Some piece of that body wants to wreck the rest of it. Okay, so that's my Dharma lesson. Now within that, I'm going to talk Turkey here. I'm going to talk forcefully, but cheerily. There's a be of good cheer, my dear friend, who I haven't seen for too long because of now wanting to travel. Reverend Michael Beckwith, over there in Los Angeles, who gives a great sermon called All Right Already. I mean, he probably does other ones too, but that's the only one I heard. All right already. I mean, everything is all right already if you know what it is. And you can know what it is. You must educate yourself to do so. You have to investigate it. Okay? And I forgot what he always says. Michael Beckwith. Oh, yeah. That everything is okay. You know, that's what Jesus had to say, that Buddha had to say that. Muhammad too. He's not a main guy. And Moses and Abraham means a compassionate father. Rahim, those sounds mean compassion, empathy, because it's a word for the womb in the Semitic languages, I believe. Rahim. Abraham. You know? Rabbi Hillel, Jesus himself was Jewish, so compassionate. Krishna is compassionate. Vishnu is compassionate. All those goddesses, the female goddess, female creatrixes, they're compassionate. So everything is going to be okay. It already is okay. So that being, when we are being, he says, be of good cheer. That's why I thought of Michael Beckwith. And he quotes Jesus as saying, be of good cheer. So you must do that, all of us, okay? We can be outraged in form to show we won't tolerate harmful insanity. But the people with whom we are critiquing or challenging or whatever it is, they can sense when we don't actually hate them. When we are actually in a view that they also can be happy if they stop doing whatever evil thing they're doing. Okay? And so our preventive, critical opposition, forceful, it's forceful, it's not based on hatred. Therefore, there's restraint. Therefore, it's done gently, if possible. It's even if it's done harshly, because they're being so harsh, it doesn't overdo by hating them and thinking they need to be destroyed or something. Okay, that's very key. That's, of course, the key to good police work. You know, law is being gentle, and being a really strong person also is always gentle. Because they know their strength, they're self-confident, you know. The person who's vicious is weak, and so they don't think they can only get there by completely going nuts, you know. Okay? So now we've had outrage. Now there's a few things I want to say. Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson, they're wonderful, and Adam Schiff, and Kinzinger, and all those really wonderful people. They have shown what the Department of Justice should be showing in a grand jury setting, that Trump, poor Donald Trump, is a criminal. He is guilty of trying to destroy America. He has been an asset of the Russian people, or of the Russian, not the people. They don't want to live in a kleptocracy themselves, of the Russian oligarchs. He has been their asset in that his buildings have been laundering their money for 20, 30 years. Never mind whether he got peed on in Moscow and whatever, Miss Universe, Putin's penthouse, and what, never mind about all that. Since the 80s, he's been an asset of them. He also never really thought he could become president. He never thought so. He just wanted to build up his name because that's the only thing he's able to sell. Before, you know. So having buildings with his name and then laundering money of oligarchs and pretending to be an oligarch himself, whereas he's always been in debt. He's always been a bad bill payer, a bad loan person, and bankrupted many times, and tax cheater. I mean, he's basically kind of a petty gangster, because his big lie, what the big lie is, you have to know, big lie doesn't mean it's a big lie. It's a technical term. It was devised for Hitler. And what it means in particular within the advertising industry and the sort of influencing industry is you tell people that your opponent is doing what you are actually doing in full sight of everybody. You're doing it. And then you say the other one is doing it. So it's it's so preposterous, in other words, the lie, that people believe it because they think, well, that's too preposterous if you just to make it up. If he was lying, he would try to be clever and say something that was more plausible. But he's being completely implausible, like Hillary Clinton is a cannibal or something, like some Wellesley graduate, do-gooder, Girl Scout, professional political Girl Scout is a cannibal. That's called a big lie. Okay? So he's been trying to rob the country. Trying to rob the presidency. He originally robbed the presidency the first time, in fact, and then he says other people are doing it. That's called a big lie. That's why they call it that, right? That's why we call it that. So, this is known, and they've shown it. Now, this is one of the main points I wanted to make today. As a criminal, he appointed, with the collusion of Mitch McConnell, who himself is a crony of Oleg Deripaska, who is a Russian oligarch who McConnell got off the sanctions list since 2014 and pretended to build some aluminum plant in Kentucky to aggrandize himself with McConnell to help him get votes in Kentucky. And then never followed through with it, though, because once he was off the list, he just went on with his oligarchic behavior, dear Oleg. I don't dislike oligarchs, by the way. They're also clever. They've done their best. They've got those billions. Eventually, sooner or later, if it keeps up, they end up giving it away because they get old and they eventually finally realize they're going to die. And then they decide they want to do something good, and then they start giving it away. And then they can do great things. I don't hate them. I don't hate any billionaires. I love them. They're wonderful. They're pursuing a little bit delusive thing after the first billion, because every subsequent one, even after the first 100 or the first tens of millions, because once you get that a lot of money, then you just have to hire a lot of people. You worry about them cheating you or you're losing it, and it becomes a big stress. It doesn't really make you happy at all. It makes you because it's a huge responsibility that weighs upon you. Anyway, So anyway, back to Trump. So they've shown that he is convictable. And if somebody's not going to be above the law, and if we're going to honor our being a country of rule of laws and not of people, and that no one is above the law, he must be judged and convicted. And the reason people don't is that they're thinking, well, he's an ex-president. And it's embarrassing for the great democracy to have to admit that a president was a criminal. Nixon sort of spared us of all that because he resigned quickly. He was also a criminal, but he resigned quickly, and then and on the deal with Ford to pardon him, and then they pardoned him. So it's not embarrassing. It proves that we are truly a democracy, that someone can be a president and be an evildoer, or in a sense, a wrongdoer, let's call it. Definitely. And I want to make this one point. This is my Eureka announcement, one of my Eureka announcements of today. Trump never was the president of our United States. Never. Because it's not only that you have to have the numbers that some people have voted for him. He was not serving as the president. That's why he could have managed the epidemic, why he was trying to wreck the European Union to please the Russian oligarchs, starting with Putin, and he was trying to not support Ukraine to please them so they could grab it. They kicked that. He lauded them kicking England out, kicking itself out of the greatest organization on the planet since World War II, founded to prevent world wars, which started in Europe and which often happened in Europe, but didn't happen for 80 years or whatever, because of the European Union, and the foolish British pulled out without having an empire to pull out into. Because he wasn't being servant of us. He was not our president from his own perspective. He was just a petty gangster, as Bob De Niro calls him, who didn't even have a code of honor as a gangster, because he would turn on anybody like he was going to hang Pence, when Pence wouldn't join him in his criminality. And so it's not an embarrassment to put him away. In fact, it's embarrassment if we don't. President means you're serving the people. You're not just serving yourself. And that he's not capable of that himself. Absolutely not. So that's the first point. It's not an embarrassment. He never was president from his own side. I'm not denying he was elected. And even though many people voted, but 7 million less than voted for Biden. And only because of Fox News. Fox News, the second main point of Fox News should be illegal. Not the news part, but the opinion part. This is all really started by Reagan in 1981. My hero, second person I want to recommend and promote is Heather Cox Richardson. You can read her free postings on Substack.com. And she is giving us all big American history lessons 2 or 3 times a week, if not sometimes every day. She's a professor of American history somewhere. And she is tremendous. And she really straightens us out about what is going on and what reality is about the thing, Really, as a historian. And for example, the filibuster. Why does anybody take it seriously for a minute? Some pompous thing of Joe Manchin, well, it enables us to have a good dialogue in the Senate, is complete nonsense. If you know, which I didn't know until I read from Heather Cox, I didn't know this. It was started by slave owners in the 1830s who were in a minority, and they realized that the tide on planet Earth, the ethical tide on planet Earth, was against human slavery. In England, earlier than the U.S., and so they wanted to rule as a minority, the government. So they infiltrated the institutions of government. And then they cooked up this thing called the filibuster, pretending like, we have to worry about the minority. Whereas the founding fathers were into how majority rule is democracy. They never were so worried about minorities. In fact, they were disliking party systems because they thought people becoming more loyal to the party than to the nation was dangerous to the nation, as we see it is now, the way the Republicans are playing it. In the past, it was the Democrats who were the slave owners, and it was the Republicans who liberated them, and Lincoln. And that was a terrible, destructive war. How many people were killed? And these people, the same kind of thing is happening now. And we should have knowledge of what happened in the past. So therefore, filibuster is no. And it is no. The minority people, when they're the slimmest majority, they cancel the filibuster right away. That's how they packed the court, with 3 religious fanatics, Catholics, by the way, to who, and by the way, I agree. As a Buddhist, I agree that a fetus has a human soul. I do agree with that. All Buddhists do. Dalai Lama does. But then they say we don't legislate that, however, on top of people who don't believe that. We can't, because that's enforcing our spiritual beliefs. We don't have such a we can't prove it. We can in a way, but not in a way that they would accept. So it is a sad thing, of course, abortion, absolutely. And the miracle of giving birth and conceiving and gestating and creating a beautiful thing that all women can do is miraculous, and they should be so deeply honored for that. But, this legislating of what to do for them, even if they're raped or they're sick or it's economically destructive to their lives or whatever it may be, this is completely wrong. It's not democracy. It's not the founding fathers. It is not. It's not original. Originalism is a fake thing for some minority ruling people who want to move. Don't forget, originalism goes back to a time when a tiny minority were the only people who voted. White male landowners. No women, no Indians, no blacks, no immigrants who didn't own property. Just a small number of property owners, white males. So originalism, if we do that, we're back to the frontier. Yeah. And we white men are too stupid, and we're too, there's too much tech that would magnify our bad tempers, our ill tempers, because the women would be not nice to us because we'd be so domineering, and therefore we'd be unhappy and irritable and destructive. So that originalism is a way of destroying all joy in life. Where are the most miserable places on planet Earth? Where women are chattel. Saudi Arabia, which is not Islam. Muhammad was not into that. Muhammad loved women. He honored them. He took care of them. He changed all rules of divorce and property and blah, blah. And Saudi Arabia is just coming up with some of their own male chauvinist ridiculous thing and projecting it into Islam. It's not part of Islam. No way. Sultans with harems may have distorted some aspects of Islam jurisprudence in the thousands of 1400 years since Muhammad's time. But in Muhammad's dispensation, his vision, his transmission of God's good energy, there's no anti-women thing in there. Very pro-women, relative to the times. But this is another newsflash. If you research it, you look up the name of Richard Viguerie, Viguerie. He was a big right-wing fundraiser. He was a pal of Jerry Falwell and the sort of moral majority in the late 90s of trying to bring the religious people into political power. The idea of dominionism, overcoming the old thing of separation of church and state that has given America its great spirituality, that's given us our democracy, not allowing the kind of, religious, nationalistic, militaristic, nationalistic religion, government being an arm of the religion. Not allowing that is all our creativity came from there. All America's fortune came from there. The people who asked Jefferson to be sure of that were the Baptists, actually, the evangelicals, because they were a minority then against the Puritans, sort of more mainstream Protestants. And therefore, they didn't want to be persecuted by the Puritans, by the Congregationalists and the Methodists and these kind of people. So they demanded that. And now they are the ones who are doing dominionism, where they want onboard Christian soldiers. They want to wield nuclear weapons in Christ's name. And Jesus weeps. He weeps when he thinks about them wanting to use his backing to legitimize violence. So anyway, therefore, before this happened, when Roe v. Wade was first passed, pastors, Baptist ones included, were happy about it. They did not protest it. Maybe the Catholic Church did, because the Catholic Church, you have to realize, outside of America, is in a demographic competition with Islam in Africa and especially in Africa, and with Asian religions in Asia. So if anybody gets to be Catholic, they want more children out of them. So that's their nutty thing about even contraception. Do you know, any male in their life, they have a million sperms. So any male could have 1 million kids if they didn't have to, bear them in their womb. So the idea that you can't use contraception, that's somehow taken off, that is ridiculous. But they do that because they want more members, because they're into market share as a corporation. And those three people who unbalanced the court, packed in there by Trump and McConnell, in the most ridiculous filibuster nuclear option manner, using the ability to cancel the filibuster when they felt like it, when they were not a big enough majority to pack the court. They put these lunatics in there, who are nice people in their own way, but they are sort of burn you at the stake type of people. They have the light in their eye, glint in their eye. They think Jesus gives them righteousness to put anybody away for whatever reason. So look out. And that's really, it was Christians who burned all the wise women in Europe for centuries. I want you to know. Because they didn't listen to Jesus. Jesus never said, burn some women who know about herbal medicine, who know the cure for the common cold. Echinacea. Never. And yet how did the Inquisition, and then unbelievable what they did. So this is even Buddhists can be really bad too by being fanatical. Religious fanaticism is totally no good no matter who is doing it. And in a way, the pseudo-religion of communism and Marxism is totally no good also. And the pseudo-religion of different conspiracy theories is no good. Science, we need reason. We need to understand. When we understand the world, we'll be happy in the world. We'll be able to help create happiness with others in the world when we understand them and it. That's really key. So then now we come to the outrage of the... So the reason that the pastors didn't mind abortion, however, initially, with Roe v. Wade, and everybody liked it, is that there are many instances where women become pregnant when they really don't want to be pregnant. And no one has a right to force them to do so. They are not breed cows. They're human beings. And in addition to being women. And they are getting abortions anyway, when their circumstances are such, and they were doing that, and the pastors knew that because the pastors kind of psychiatrists for their parishioners, or good ones are. So they were happy they could have a healthy, not harmful, not coat hanger and weird chemicals or strange, damaging, physically damaging actions. For example, someone who wants to have many kids might want to have an abortion at 18 or 16 when they're not ready for that. So they don't want to damage the equipment, so they can have kids when they have a good relationship in their late to mid-20s. Right? So those pastors were happy that they had medical help. But this Richard Viguerie knew this could become a good wedge issues, what they call in politics wedge issue, which means it can be made into an emotional issue where people think they're really helping life. They're doing saintly things. They're dealing with satanic evildoers, so they'll become outraged. And they'll be then victimizable because they will vote for people like Reagan, like the Bushes, like Trump, who actually, obviously, if you look with common sense, with common coolness, they're going to harm you because they only like rich people. They want to take away your Social Security. They want to take away your health care. They want to take away your good school. They want to take away everything and get all the money for themselves. Use the government to make themselves into oligarchs. That's what once Lincoln's party, the Republican Party that was party of liberation, became, since the 60s, especially after Eisenhower, and particularly in its times of power since Reagan, it became the party of the minority super rich. And therefore, in order to deceive the poor or the middle class and to take their money away from them to be more rich, they had to have wedge issues. And these are like cultural issues. Oh, gay people are really bad. People of other races are really bad. It's the black people who are on welfare who are ruining you and why you can't get a job and why you feel so poor. It's not your rich boss who takes away your union membership, who exports your job to China where he can have slaves by upholding a dictatorship that enslaves its own people under communism. This is how you've been deceived. And I mentioned Heather Cott Richardson because she says the time when America was really expanding people's rights, economic, civil, cultural, this can be counted by a historian from 1933 to 1981. And in 1981, cumulatively, working on it since Goldwater and Nixon and so on, the party of the rich, of the over-rich, rather, party of the over-rich became more and more adept at their tax cut Santa Claus and overwhelmed the FDR and following social system Santa Claus and deceived the people to that government was their enemy. And so progressively paralyzed the government until it reached the time in 2016 when it was so paralyzed that a completely unfit person could conceivably be numerically, through the Electoral College at least, if not popularly, be the president. And actually W. Bush was also completely unfit. His own father knew that. He was playboy. He was not. Cheney knew that, therefore he manipulated him. The old Cheney was a Petropath. The young Cheney has become a democratic, wonderful conservative hero. We need conservatives. They need to be honest ones who will be a loyal opposition when they are in the minority. And when in the majority, they will truly govern for the benefit of the people. They will serve the people, which is what a democratic government should be doing. Okay? So, but don't worry. My last message for today, channel your outrage. Protest and go in the street, that's good. But in a way, long run, that's not going to change their behavior. What you have to do is you have to channel it into $10 for every Democratic candidate in every close race or every race, in the Senate especially, and in the House as well. Don't listen to the media who get paid advertisements by the oligarchs and the Petropaths by saying that, oh, it's inevitable the first midterm election of a new president is always against his party. That has been the case because of the destruction by Reagan of the fairness doctrine, which allowed propaganda to infest our cable media and allowed Murdoch to infest your brain. So many of you, 100 million, 60 million of you. Otherwise, the crazies in this country are always around 18 to 20%. That's why they couldn't win elections. But when another 25% sort of think of themselves as independent, but get casual, they get swept up in that craziness. And then another 15, 20% of the majority don't bother to vote because they're complacent or they get desperate or they get defeatist. Then we can get these terrible oligarchic presidents and officials and senators and congresspeople who use the government to oppress us rather than use the government to defend us, which is their job. They take an oath of office and then they ignore that to uphold the faith and good credit of the Constitution of the United States. That's what they take that as. I don't take it to rob the presidency, to invest in things that I make bills about and then I get a raise of investment. Those people are crooks. They're not public servants. So channel the outrage into organizing. You leftists join with you moderates on the so-called left, which are the right ones now. And don't fight between yourselves for the next 6 months. We have to defeat that sort of rule of thumb, which is part of our corrupt politics, that somehow we automatically lose. That's a method of strangling the government so it can't defend us against corporations and the oligarchs. The president should have a time. Obama only had 2 years, and he was paralyzed by the Gingrich and McConnell. Clinton was paralyzed by Gingrich. And that's part of the destroy the government that started by Reagan. The government is the problem. It's not that the government can help you solve your problems. It's that the government is the problem. That's a very bad that's a big lie that destroys democracy. The definition of fascism by Mussolini is when the government and the big corporations and the oligarchs are all working together to suppress the people whose institution is just their family and their job, or jobs in a bad economy. Everybody has to work. And the family is not strong enough to resist corporations and governments. Definitely not. If they're unified. But a good government, democratic government, defends against people, the robber barons, when they get too strong. That's the whole point of democracy. So channel your outrage into the vote that's coming up, and organizing for the vote, and getting on the media, and speaking up in coffee shops, and telling someone who's blurting and blabbing QAnon that they're wrong. Bravely telling them. Don't get angry with them. Tell them in a nice way, but tell them. Speak up. And vote. And then vote with your pocketbook. With $10 here and $3 and $27 there, even if you're not wealthy. Try to give. So channel this outrage. And then we don't have to get 60 senators. We just need a majority in the House, and we just need enough senators to overwhelm 3 or 4, 2 well-known ones, Sinema and Manchin, and maybe a few more. So we need 4 or 5, we need 55 seats. That's enough in the Senate. Then we can cancel the filibuster when we need to. Then with the canceled filibuster, let them shout and scream, much as they like, you pass a law that is Roe v. Wade. Freedom from forced pregnancies. Legal abortion, medically legal. And criminal punishment for fanatic, pro-life fanatics who are going to shoot doctors, harass people on their way to the clinic, and so on. Second, because they have this ridiculous majority where even Roberts didn't vote for this asinine bill they just did, and Roberts has no control over the complete fanatics. 13 monkeys instead of 9. Make it 13. And pass that bill, and then pass the filibuster to put them through, and make them all sensible, and then make a test for those 4. They don't have to all be Democrats. Some could be Republicans. The test would be a test of rationality. So we fix the court, and then if they don't have enough rooms in the courthouse building, we build an extra room. Some extra rooms for the other 13. Maybe we make them have term limits. It's maybe 16 years or 8 years or 70 years of age they have to retire. Maybe or 75. They have to retire. Some kind of term limit. And you just pass a law like that. So, we just get back to Congress to be a working Congress, and they start passing laws, and we start fixing things up. It's very easy. And then we stop subsidizing the oil industry. And we put all that subsidy, 20, 30 billion a year, we put it into renewables and nukes, by the way. Nuclear reactor generating electricity, not big, ugly ones that mess up the climate like 3 Mile Island and are dangerous and have all this polluted water and radio. There's a new kind of thorium nuke. There's some studies and books, even the best environmentalists know about it. I know this is heresy for Greenpeace and people, but it's a necessary bridge to keep all the lights on, to charge up the electric vehicles and electric trucks and electric heaters. We need nukes because of our level of population. And we need to, and it will revive old shipbuilding industries. The good new ones can be built on a ship hull assembly line, much cheaper. And they can be put up and they can be put away out of pollution air level very easily. It's very doable. Please study up on it. Anyway, I know there's a lot of shocking things, starting with the big news flash. Nothing is nothing. Trump was never president. The ultimate reality is the clear light of infinite energy, of pure transparency, brilliant, loving light, divine love and compassion. God is love. Love is God, just as much, and Goddess. Love is Mr. and Mrs. God, even. Okay? So everything is good. So know nothing. God is love. Love is God. love is Buddha, Buddha is love. Love is Krishna, Krishna is love. Goddess is love, love is goddess. Okay, that's the second one. Third one, the so-called ex-president, Mr. Trump, was never president. From his own side, so it's not embarrassing that he should be judged, and his lies should be refuted rationally, and rationality becomes an important matter. We have to go back to Madison's concept of deliberative democracy. We can pass gun laws that are reasonable, just make the gun producers liable by lawsuit for somebody shooting everybody. They're going to stop making machine guns for the general population. They're going to stop. And there'll be a lot of machine guns that'll be there saved in case anybody invades, keep it in an armory, okay, somewhere. Because they'll all give them back. Keep their hunting rifles and their whatever they need for their defense. And nobody needs an assault rifle. This is just, bam, it can be passed in one season of a Congress. And that was a shocking thing. 3, irrationality. No one who is irrational cannot pass a basic reasoning exam should be allowed to be a Supreme Court judge. We can add 4 Supreme Court judges to rebalance the court. Very quickly, pass a gun law very quickly, pass Roe v. Wade as a legislation very quickly, and it's all boom, boom, boom. So it's just that quick. This whole thing, Obama's famous statement of "yes, we can" will actually prevail, finally. Not the "no, we can't" that he started saying once he was in the White House. Yes, we can, and maybe we'll get a good president who'll be a comedian. Chris Rock, but a female comedian, one of those great female comedians. We need a comedian president like the lucky Ukrainians have Volodymyr Zelensky. Not some self-important, pompous guy, a comedian. A woman comedian would be the ideal president, okay? Maybe multiracial woman comedian. All right, so that's it. Goodbye. Thank you. This is my outrage channeling. Vote. Register, help others register, give donations, even if $3. You can sprinkle it here and there. Remember, if hundreds of millions sprinkle it, it's $300 million. That will wear out the oligarchs with all their campaign contributions and get TV time. Later, we will change the TV time and be free, but it's not the case now, so you give some money. Right now, register, vote, really turn out. 60, 70% of the people turn out, and we will keep Congress, and we will keep the 80% who wanted assault rifles banned, the 80% who didn't want abortion banned, the 80% who want sane people in the government, and they want good entertainment on the TV and not propaganda and brainwashing. That's 80%. Don't worry. It's Republicans and Democrats. Where they're not confused by all this mess that has been made by starting with, I'm sorry to say, Mr. Reagan. Okay? All right? So thank you. Be of good cheer. We dedicate the merit of this short conversation to all of you becoming as enlightened as you are capable of being, which is very enlightened, every single one of you. Which is reasonable. It doesn't mean in a blinding flash you become a fanatic. It means you become very reasonable, very compassionate, very empathetic, very loving, very happy, very friendly, very cheery, as quickly as possible. I don't mean to domineer you. I don't want anybody else doing it. I don't want any religious people doing it. I don't want any political people doing it. I don't want any fanatical people doing it. You are your own boss and master. You have your own reason. You are your own lover. You can love everybody, including yourself, and you'll be happy when you do it. Okay? So all the best. Take it easy. And by one thing, but not only the Ukrainians, but we should all resolve, when we get our own government back under control, to liberate the Russian people and the Chinese people. And liberating them means also liberating their oligarchs and their dictatorship of the proletariat, stupid Marxist idea that the Chinese have, where dictatorship is not of the people, it's just of the dictator is the problem, And they all need to be released, where each one has a little jewel of freedom, reason, compassion, and good cheer, such as what democracy, the ideal of democracy, can be realized. There's nothing stopping anybody from realizing it, except bad habits and a sense of defeatism, which we were going to get rid of, right? By knowing that reality has the energy we need not to be defeated, okay? All the best. Bye. Thank you. Thank you, Justin, my engineer.
And thank you, Bob. This episode was originally recorded live at the home of Robert and Nena Thurman and was streamed live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. To enjoy those full video versions, please follow us at Tibet House US Menla Online on YouTube and Bob Thurman on Twitter. This podcast is produced through the generous support of the Tibet House US Menla membership community and listeners like you. To learn how to support this podcast by becoming a member, please visit our websites at thus.org, menla.org, and bobthurman.com. Music generously supplied by Tenzing Chogyal. To learn more about the work and music of Tenzing Chogyal, please visit his website at tenzingchogyal.com. And as always, this podcast is produced through a Creative Commons No Derivatives license. Please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and repost on your favorite social media platforms. Tashi Delek, and thanks for tuning in.